So welcome everyone to the Strong Body, Strong Mind, the mental side of officiating webinar. The reason we started this program is because, with COVID, everyone has been off the field for a little while. And I think one thing that we're all hoping to do is, we're checking up on the rules, we're watching games where they're still happening to try to make sure that we hone our skills. But one important aspect in general, and also when we're going to get back on the field, is the mental side, is how do we feel when we're on the field? Making sure that we have the confidence to be there and that we don't let tiny mistakes, affect our game too much. It's something that, that can happen always. It's probably happened before COVID, but now coming back, we want to make sure that people are, mentally strong for the challenges that are ahead, getting back out there, making maybe a little bit more mistakes because it's been a while. So we want to give you some tools and techniques to recognize behavior, to recognize these fallacies, and to how to deal with that. For this session, I'm here. Hi. You might know me as Séraphine Aelterman. I am the ELF European Lacrosse Federation Umpiring Coordinator. And for this session, I've also invited Lauren Charwat, the Officiating Coordinator for World Lacrosse, to join me, the Women's Officiating Coordinator. And on the side of our two experts are Kris, Perquy and Maenhout, who will now introduce themselves.
Great, thank you, Séraphine. And it's a pleasure to be here. So this is Kris Perquy, and I'm joined by Maenhout. So we are two sports psychologists from Belgium. We are working in different professional sports here, mostly team sports. We've been working for 12 to 13 years in professional sports with players, supporting coaches, and also officials to make sure that they manage the mental side of their game. And we help them prepare for a world-class performance and help them look back on performance and improve. So today we're very excited to work with Lauren and Séraphine and present to you a program to help you prepare for your games, prepare for the mental side of officiating. And we prepared a couple of chapters for you. So this is our program for this evening. So we'll start with setting the scene. So we present the context, a couple of insights on psychology, and more specifically on how psychology impacts your game. You will certainly recognize a couple of these factors, a couple of these influences that you are encountering in your games, in your game preparation. So this is a short introduction, setting the scene, and then we'll try to make it as practical as possible. And we're going to use the experience from your colleagues here today to have very practical examples, and we'll present 3 different chapters. We start with pre-game, so a couple of scenarios that you might encounter when you are preparing for your game, and how does psychology enter the pitch when you are preparing. And then we'll talk about managing your game. So during the game, the kind of pressure that you are dealing with, we'll focus on confidence, on how you can impact, how you can enhance your level of confidence during the game when you start having some doubts, for example. And then we'll zoom in on regulating your emotions. You will have had the experience also that you get upset because things are not going your way, for example, or that you get some complaints or remarks from players or coaches, and you feel the emotions becoming more and more forceful, if you like. So how can you manage those? So that's going to be the 3rd chapter. And then we'll bring it all together in a short summary, making a recap of the different techniques that we've presented. So to leave you with a psychology toolbox, if you like. So let's have a look at some of the psychological challenges that you are facing. And when you look at your role in a game, it is not an easy role. So we understand there are quite a few influences that you need to manage. So we tried to summarize them, the different factors. So coaches, your own official, your own colleagues will play a part. Obviously the players, you will have the location and crowd that can have an impact, media, and also last but not least, your own expectations. So if we, just a few comments on how psychology works in all of these factors. If you look at players and coaches, for example, these are obviously factors that are very near, literally, and have an impact. And then the experience that you have with players, for example, is already something that will influence you because you have some good experiences with certain players, you have some bad experience with other players, and in your brain this will have an impact. So the image that you have of a certain player will have an impact. That can be a favorable image that you have, so you can be more biased in a positive way, or it can be like a negative perception that you have for a certain player, and then you can have a tendency maybe to be more strict or more negative in your officiating. So that will have, not consciously, but unconsciously, this can be a factor that influences your game. So because our brain tends to work with shortcuts, we tend to have so much information on the pitch that we need to work with shortcuts in order to remain effective. And one of these shortcuts is that we use labels for players. This is a certain type of player, and we use this label to make a decision. This helps us, but it can also be a risk because it can prevent us from observing in a very meticulous, detailed, and objective way what is actually happening. So one of the challenges in your game will be to assess yourself and to challenge yourself to see if your decisions are based on observations and if you're not getting carried away by some of these psychological influences, like a bias that you can have for a player or a coach.
It's interesting that you say that, Kris, because it is one of the things that I think officials strive for and pride themselves on, that we look at the rules and we look at what's happening. So I do think it's interesting when you say it's not a conscious thing, because I think on the level of the consciousness, that's already where a lot of officials are working on, and you really, and probably are getting that right. So yeah, that'll be interesting to hear about on the subconscious level.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And then one factor maybe also to highlight a little bit is then the own team, right? You're not working alone, you're not working in isolation, you're working together with your fellow officials, and if you're lucky, you're together for quite a bit, and you know each other, you know each other's style of officiating, but sometimes you go to an international tournament, you get together with new colleagues, you get to know each other quickly, you build some scenarios together, you make some agreements together, but it's on the pitch, you get some surprises, right? And you need to react to that. And one of the biases that can occur is that as a head official, you tend to have what we call an authority bias. You feel you need to take the lead. So you have this urge to have the final call, right? And even if your colleagues may make the perfect call, your unconscious bias can be to have the last say, to correct it or nuance it or change it even, and that's also a bias that you need to be aware of. This authority bias, because you're the lead official, you think you need to be the person having the last word and having the final say. So that's something also to keep in mind, and that we will look at a little bit more in depth.
Can I inject right there just to add, since we're moving on, if you are the lead, there is a fine line between leading a game and taking over a game. And that's what you don't want. You want to allow, if your teammate makes a mistake, recognize it for what it is, allow them, if it's a small mistake, you know it's not going to change the game, just let them walk through it. You can discuss it at the next time out. You do not have to be on top of everything. We all make mistakes, right? The players are going to make them, coaches are going to make them. And so if it's a big game-changing thing, then maybe you can call a timeout and step in, but lead without taking over.
Yeah.
And that takes your teammates out of their game too. And then the coaches don't see anybody but you. And now they're going to make you responsible for everything, stuff that's happening clear across the field that you can't even see. They're going to turn to you because they're thinking, well, she's the only real official out here right now. So that's a scenario you do not want to fall into.
Yeah, exactly. Because then you'll probably influence people. You're, like you said, Lauren, you'll influence the other person because you're taking them out of their game and you're making them question themselves. So now they're in a bad space. But like you said, if people are, then looking to you, then you're adding pressure on yourself that you have to all of a sudden get every call on the field, which is obviously impossible. And so that's like added pressure on yourself, and you're just setting yourself up for a bad mental game as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Great comments. Thank you very much. And the final part is the own expectations, and that's the one we're going to zoom in on to start the first chapter. The expectations that you have before the game, right? Maybe you've had the same teams already once before, and you had a certain experience with the teams, so that will be a basis to build your own expectation. Maybe this is an important game for you. It's the start of a new season. It's the end of the season. It's the final of a tournament, things like that. All these elements will impact your own expectations. Yeah? And when you are preparing your game, you are building a couple of expectations. Yeah? So it's important to be aware of that, and then to think about what you can do to have these, to manage your expectations. And that's the little segue to our first chapter, how to prepare for a good game.